Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is Azra Khairul Najwa and I'm from English Education 2024. Here I want to read a study titled Grammar Interaction in Communicative Language Teaching Classroom Student Teacher Perception. Abstract. The aim of the study was to find out the teachers' and students' perception toward grammar, interaction, and communicative language teaching classroom. The participants of the study were two teachers and four students from an Islamic junior high school madrasa. We used a case study method to conduct this research to identify teachers' and students' perception in teaching and learning grammar interaction in communicative language teaching classroom. The data were collected by using interview. The data were analyzed by using thematic analysis. The findings indicated that there were five indicators on student teachers' perception. One, grammar was a crucial component in improving English skills. Two, using correction was seen as one of process to create students in mastering materials. 4. Teaching grammar interaction in CLT classroom teacher act as motivator and facilitate all students' need. 5. Students should take part on the process of learning. Introduction. Grammar is the language framework and system of meaning. Every language seems to have grammar, and persons speaking in a similar language will communicate because they naturally understand the grammar structure, which is the rules of meaning. According to Baston, language without grammar is going to messy, and it's harder to understand language without looking for this basic framework. So grammar language will be impossible to learn effectively without following structural rules. They found that grammar plays a very important role in the study of language. The purpose of grammar is to educate those who use English to express their thought probably both in speaking and writing. Research by Azad indicated that grammar is an essential and inseparable part in language teaching. So, teachers have tended to use communicative activities in teaching grammar interaction in. It is mean that in teaching English as foreign language, it is necessary to consider not only how learners acquire grammatical competence but also how they learn to communicate. That is how they develop communication competence. In the importance of teaching English grammar as foreign language, various methods and approaches have been applied to enhance learning competence. Savage, Bitterlin, and Price research tools six approaches that have a significant impact on grammar interaction, including grammar translation method, direct method, audio lingual method, cognitive approach, natural approach, and communicative approach. Among them, the communicative approach, commonly called CLT, is one of the current trends of language teaching. According to Lopez and Agulo, the main intention of CLT is designed to teach communicative competence, which involves part of speech and tenses as a sentence construction, a teaching technique that refers to several aspects of language, including the use of language for multiple purpose and function, distinguish between formal and informal oral and writing discourse. Based on the statement above, it can be concluded that grammar should be taught in communicative ways which focus on developing the language to perform the skills. The use of CLT in teaching grammar in the second language classroom is a means of changing the attitude of the students toward language learning and positive influence their way of learning. Furthermore, Larson, Freeman, Ricard, and Rogers and Harmers describe the key principle of CLT approach that can be summarized as follows. Communicative competence is the primary goal. Authentic materials are used to encourage students to use the language. The language learning is learned by trial and error. Students mostly work in pairs and small groups. Grammar is best learning through the process of communication. Teachers have a role as facilitator and monitor, and students as negotiator are individual responsible to make themselves understand and be understood in the process of communication. From the statement, it can be concluded that using CLT provides students in repetition, accuracy, and memorization grammar patterns, but they demand the students in order to negotiate meaning and connect meaningfully in foreign contexts. Also, teachers will need to build exercise in the CLT classroom that enable students to learn well in target language. The adoption of CLT in Indonesian language teaching curriculum has gone through several change and development. Rahman stated that the latest curriculum in Indonesian, which usually called as Curriculum 2013, adopted CLT approach into its implementation. Not only that, the popularity of CLT kept increasing as many teachers applied the concept of CLT in their classroom. From some previous related studies on learning anxiety, a researcher's study was conducted to find out student teachers' perception in teaching grammar interaction in communicative language teaching classroom. Literature review. The concept of communicative language teaching. Communicative language teaching (CLT) is one of approach to language teaching. This approach was found from the awareness that language as a system for communication, not just a set of the rules. It switched the emphasis of traditional language teaching to grammar, and teachers contract classes to the active use of authentic language in learning and acquisition. CLT is an approach that emphasizes communicative ability. Furthermore, Ricard content that CLT described as of general principles grounded in the notion of communicative competence as the goal of second and foreign language teaching, a new approach that has evolved as our understanding of the process of second learning language learning has developed. From the definition above, it can be concluded that communicative language teaching (CLT) is a language teaching that emphasizes interaction as concept of meaning and final aim of language learning. Communicative activities plays an important role in teaching communicative language. As a record state its communicative competence, there are several approaches that help students improve learning in communication. Further, Littlewood differs type two main categories in communicative activities. There are foundational communicative activities and social interaction activities. Approach to teaching grammar had undergone many changes. These changes have characterized grammar teaching to move from a grammar-based approach to a communicative approach. Lawson Freeman discussed that grammar in communicative language teaching (CLT) is presented as a way to convert students in deliver their meaning appropriately. Grammar interaction can be performed both deductively and educatively, but focuses on the meaning and function of form in the situation context and the role of the interlocutors. In summary, inductively or deductively grammar can be taught in communicative language teaching. Some students learn with rule of grammar, while others need rule to understand the grammatical structure. Methodology, research design, participant, and local of the study. The study used intrinsic case study method as the way to collect the data. Craswell states case study is qualitative approach that involves the study above issue explored through one or more cases over time through the time. In-depth data collection involving multiple sources of information. We use intrinsic case study because the study design was focused on the case itself. The case presents an unusual or a unique situation. Data collect and analysis. In this research, in order to find out the teachers and student perception in grammar, interaction in communicative language teaching, we use interview in order to gain information about teachers and student perception toward grammar interaction in communicative language teaching classroom. The analyze the data of teachers and student perception toward grammar interaction in communicative language teaching classroom. The data from interview were analyzed to determine information about teachers and students' perception toward grammar interaction in communicative language teaching classroom. After we collect the data, we analyze the data by using thematic analysis. In this research, we use trustworthiness to evaluate qualitative data analysis to make sure that the findings were reliable. Craswell defines validating is the researchers evaluate authenticity or credibility of the result through some techniques such as member checking or triangulation. Finding the data gained from interview were analyzed by using thematic analysis. The description of the finding were explained as follows. Teacher perception. After analysis the data from interview, we found that there was some teachers' perception toward grammar introduction and communicative language teaching. The importance of grammar. Based on the data obtained from the interviews, we got some teacher perception about grammar introduction in communicative language teaching. We found that most of the teachers agreed that the grammar was a critical component in improving student skills in CLT classroom. It was because grammar was very helpful for the students in improving English language. Teachers, I say yes, if the students will know about the grammar in English, they will have good communication English. The data obtained from interview also show that the teachers perceived the explicit grammar interaction was helpful in a CLT classroom. Teachers to climate. In teaching grammar, I clearly express that a communicative way in teaching, such as introduction, grammar point to example and activities which is help students feel a little safer and also increase student motivation. Classroom activities. Based on the data obtained from interview, it was found some perception toward grammar interaction in communicative language teaching. We found that most of the teachers agreed that in learning process, group work or peer work was designed to promote communication in the classroom. However, all the teachers also perceived that in applying group work, students were able to interact well. The data obtained from interview also show that the teachers recommended pair or group work interaction was effective activities. Therefore, in teachers had to provide their learning with opportunities to engage in meaningful interaction. The teachers want them to climb it. In teaching English, we had to make the class more lively, so group discussion are on-off method give students opportunity to example problem themselves. Quality and quantity of error correction. Based on the data obtained from interview, we found that most of teachers agreed that error correction was on a process to create students in mastering materials. However, the teachers also did not feel angry when students made a grammatical error. The teachers to claim that error or mistakes in communication in English is tolerated. So if the students make a mistake in learning process, so we as a teacher can make it correct. The data obtained from interview also show that the most teachers believe that correction in errors or mistakes was an obligation for teachers. Therefore, the teachers should give the immediate correction feedback for students. Teacher 1 Climate correction grammar mistake is an obligation for English teachers, but in good way without underestimate the students. The role of teacher in classroom. The data obtained from interview show that in teaching grammar interaction in communicative language teaching, teachers act as motivator in teaching learning process. The teachers want climate that yes, because teachers also act as motivator in the teaching learning process. However, we also found that the most of the teachers train the students to take responsibility and self-discipline to develop their activities. Teachers to say training learners to take responsibility and self-discipline are good develop their ability because every learners need to take the responsibility for their learning. The role of the role and contribution of students in the learning process. The data obtained from the interview also revealed that teaching grammar interaction in the CLT classroom should be balanced. In teaching English between tasks and activities must be balanced. Also in teaching English language, students should not only mastering the theory but also practicing the theory. Teacher to express. If students master English grammar, they will have good knowledge. But if the students are having lack of practice, of course they will still getting difficulty in communication. So of course in learning English language theory and practice should be balanced. The student's perception toward grammar interaction and communicative language teaching. After analyzing the data from interview, we found that there was some student perception toward grammar interaction and communicative language teaching. The importance of grammar. Based on the data obtained from the interview, we found that some student perception about grammar interaction in communicative language teaching classroom. We found that most of the student considered grammar as important part in learning English language. Student 1 and 3 said that yes, because grammar important to mastering English language. The student 2 had the same opinion. They said because with grammar we can communicate with the foreign easier. The data obtained from interview also show that students felt the grammar was core of English. Student 4 climate. Yeah, by learning English grammar we can produce good sentence. Classroom activities. Based on the data obtained from interview, it was found some perception toward grammar interaction on in communicative language teaching. In learning process, I found that most of the students agreed that using graph made it faster and appropriate was to develop knowledge quickly. The students one side that yes, it's more understandable and the tasks finished quickly. Moreover, the student three claimed that studying in group is good. I can ask my friends and practice speaking more comfortability. Then student 2 and 4 have some opinion. They said, in pair can know what I don't know before. Quality and quantity of error correction. Based on the data obtained from interview, we found that most of students agreed that by correction the error has been considered helpful in teaching successful communicative competence. As the students once said, because the learners can know where the errors. Then as the students who said important because by correction the learners know where the mistakes and can correct them. The students for also said, my teachers always correct my error clearly so I know and how to fix my mistakes. However, the students also did not feel bad when the teachers corrected their mistake. As the students three said, I often made a grammar mistakes when speaking English, but my teachers correct it in a good way. The role of teachers in classroom. The data obtained from interview found some students' perception toward the role of the teachers teaching grammar interaction. In communicative language teaching classroom, students argued that the role of teachers in the classroom as an independent within the learning teaching group give motivation to students and the teacher facilitate all the student need. The students one claimed that the teacher done much over control let the students get the creatively if it's not out of lesson. Then the student two said the teacher giving the students motivation. The students three said the teacher should facilitate all of the students. The, the last one with the teachers for said a good teachers explain the material intelligently. The role and contribution of students in the learning process. The data gotten from the interview also revealed that the role and contribution of the students in the learning process, the student perceived that the students should take part on process of learning. In addition, students argue that the role and contribute students in the learning is a reservoir the listen. The student one kind as an active learner who ready to answer the teachers question. The students too also said pay attention and understanding the lesson. In addition, students four said following the learning process well. Discussion. After analyzing the data by using a thematic analysis, it was found that there was several information about teacher and student perception toward grammar, interaction, and communicative language teaching classroom. Those considered of A. The importance of grammar. B. Classroom activities. C. Quality and quantity of error correction. D. The role of teachers in classroom. E. The role and contribution of students in the learning process. Therefore, the explanation of the factors was described as following in order to know futures most information about them. The first was the importance of grammar. Most of teachers and students perceive that grammar was important in learning English language. The teachers agreed that the grammar was a curricular importance in improving student skills in CLT classroom. It was because grammar was very helpful for the students in improving English language. These findings is supported by AZ 2013 in his study. He found that the teachers believe grammar is an inseparable and essential component in language teaching. The teachers also provide explicit grammar interaction and contextualizes the use of grammar within communicative activities. Farahian found in her research that most teachers value teaching grammar to meaningful communicative activities. However, the students also consider grammar as an important part in learning English language. This finding is supported by Mirazna and Hikmah in their study. They revealed that students were aware of the importance of grammar. They assume that by learning grammar they can be measured that English ability. The third quality and quantity of error correction. The teachers use this a concise message to the students that their contribute were neglectable of incorrect and that they should consider or clarify them. The find indicated that most of teachers agreed that error correction was part of the process to create students in mastering materials. That teachers also state that correction an error or mistake was an obligation for teachers. The data obtained from interview also show that most of students agree that by correction an error has been considered helpful in teaching successful. Fever research. Repeating of student cognitive errors with the correct one of deal with error. On the other hand, Katayama declined students wanted to receive or error correction to improve their accuracy in English. The fifth, the role and contribute of students in the learning process. The research showed that teaching grammar interactions in CLT classroom should be balanced. In teaching English between tasks and activities must be balanced. Also in teaching English language students should not only mastering the theory but also practicing the theory. The finding was in agreement with provided research by Sukarno, who found that the English teachers could determine how English to be taught beyond learn English through activities and social context, and teach their students naturally on the basic of social improvement as results. The students masters English through acquisition. Otherwise, the student perceived that the student should taking part on the process of learning. This finding was supported by Nasika. She found that the teachers in her study addresses the importance of learning autonomy in language learning process. It was enabled learners become autonomous when they charges of their own learning. Conclusion: based on the data analysis by using thematic analysis, it was found teachers and students' perception toward grammar interaction in communicative language teaching. The first, teachers' perception in teaching grammar interaction in communicative language teaching classroom. 1. The teachers think that provide students with explicit explanation was an effective way to teach grammar interaction in CLT classroom. 2. In learning process, teachers using group and peer work was designed to promote communication in CLT classroom. 3. Teachers claimed that in learning process, error correction was one of process students to mastering materials, so correction mistakes was an obligation for teachers. 4. Teachers perceived they should act as motivator in teaching's learning process and training students to take responsibility and develop their activities. 5. In teaching grammar interaction in CLT classroom, students should not only mastering the theory but also practicing the theory. The research only focus to find out the teachers and students' perception in grammar interaction in communicative language teaching because the limitation of time. By knowing the teachers and students' perception in teaching and learning grammar interaction in communicative language teaching because the limitation of time, we accept students considered grammar as an language teaching because the limitation of time. We accept students considered grammar as an important part in learning English language. So the study can inspire students to increase their important part in learning English language. So the study can inspire students to increase their interest in learning grammar in CLT classroom. So it was better for students to start using their language communicatively at the grassroots level. We help the teachers help the students to consider a better way in teaching grammar interaction and CLT classroom. The teachers should know what the students need in improving student skills. The teachers also should create an English uh, environment in the class to promote communication in CLT classroom. Also, the teachers should act as motivator in the teaching learning process to increase students' opportunities to practice English because in learning English language is not only mastering grammar but also the increase students' opportunity to practice English language. Last, we hope that the present study can be usable for the next future researchers who are interested to excavate more information about teachers and students' perception in grammar interaction in communicative language teachings. I think that's all. Thank you for watching. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.